By all means, there are remarkable things that Muslims are ready to believe in. They're ready to accept. But they are things that are accomplished not by a suspension of the natural laws, but by an unusual application of the natural laws. The Quran explains that when God wills something, He simply says to it, be, and it is. Is this hard to understand? Can the saying be the doing? In fact, we deal this way ourselves. Some say always. Suppose I say to this man, I congratulate you. When did I congratulate him? In what way? Did I tell him about something I was going to do, or I did? The saying was the doing. I congratulate you. I did it when I said it. Or if I say to this man, I appoint you as my representative. When I said it, I did it. It's not a difficult concept to understand that the saying can be the same as the doing. This is God as Baruch Spinoza understood Him about 300 years ago. The will of God, he said, is no more and no less than those things which take place in the sense of physics. This is why we can say all things originate with God, but we bring evil on ourselves. For example, the chemical reactions between cigarette smoke and human lung tissue are natural law, but the smoker brings the damage on himself. Spinoza said there is but one infinite item, and that only is logical. If it's infinite, there can't be room for two of them. He said there is but one infinite item, and whatever the attributes of that item are, we can only know about two of them, extension and thought. He meant that we know the physical universe and we know how it works. This is the same as the Quranic ascription of Allah as al-Zahir al-Batin, the evident and the immanent, or the external and the internal. This means that the universe and how it functions is all we know of God. The same verse also describes Allah as source and goal, al-awwal al-akhir, the first and the last. Two attributes that seem to be opposites, and yet they are really just two different viewpoints of one reality. And let me continue with that thought. I'm talking here a moment ago about God being everywhere, in the sense that as the universe performs, that's the way He wishes it to perform. His will is the same as the functioning of the universe. From another point of view, we could say God is only rarely present. Only sometimes is He present. And by this I mean He is present where a man has taqwa, where a man has really attained a constant awareness of God as a reference point. Something remarkable happens. It's where God puts in an appearance. Whether that man be a Jesus Christ or Albert Schweitzer, if their mind is fixed on the absolute, they become a remarkable kind of individual. So then, to avoid being lost, in every sense of the word, it is necessary to verify things and to take appropriate action. These are the first 2 points. The last 2 requirements parallel these, because knowledge and action, in order to be meaningful, must be effective. They must accomplish something, or they don't really mean anything. So as we acquire knowledge, we aid others to do the same. And as we do well, we help others to do the same. So possibly the 103rd Surah, Surah Al-Asr, is more significantly or alternately translated as, man is lost, except for those who verify things and realize their potential and confront others with reality and encourage others to persevere. Now, we've dealt with translating a short chapter of the Quran, a book which is said to be a revelation. This word revelation is a problem for many because it has connotations of sacred mysteries beyond the limits of knowledge. The point is that Muslims believe God to be unknowable in the first place. The Quran does not reveal God. It reveals His will. Now to another topic concerning belief. Maybe we'll have time to go to the blackboard, and as I say, if I lose you on something, I encourage you to look it up for yourself and look it over to see that I do, after all, know what it is I'm talking about. The topic is proving the existence of God. The rational arguments, those who would prove the existence of God, the rational arguments can usually be put into one of three categories: the ontological, the cosmological, and the teleological arguments. And without dealing with them right now, I can tell you that they are all faulty. They don't prove the existence of God. The arguments were demonstrated to be faulty more than 200 years ago, at least, if not 800 years ago. But they continue to be used. You will still see them printed in abundance, one of these three arguments. In the first place, the project which attempts to prove the existence of God is self-contradictory. God is said to be absolute, which means He depends on nothing. Proving His existence means we make some more basic assumption and we build up to God, in which case God fails to be absolute. He depends on our basic assumptions, you see. So it's a foolish kind of a project in the first place. You assume you have an absolute, and then you go ahead and try to prove it, and you undo your definition. One produces a proof for a theorem which says it doesn't have a proof. God is not a theorem based on some assumptions. Rather, God, the absolute, is a necessary item to complete our picture of reality. More accurately, I mean to say that if we make the assumption that the universe makes sense, then we simultaneously acknowledge the singularity in the scheme, which is the absolute, that which is independent of the total concept of the scheme. And there are two ways of seeing this. They are the results of the work of a 20th century mathematician by the name of Kurt Gödel, and you can look him up for an account. There are popular books on the subject. The Scientific American did an article on him a few years ago. In 1931, Kurt Gödel, it's G-O-D-E-L, came up with two theorems that really shook the world of philosophy, logic, and mathematics. I won't explain them in great detail, but try to give you the import. Remember that theories are built on assumptions. So one might think that if we made enough assumptions, then we could go ahead and decide the truth or the falsity of every statement. But an interesting thing happens in logic. Too many assumptions, to start with, produces a logical system that is self-destructive. You've heard of the man who says, "I've invented the universal solvent," and his friend asks him, "What kind of a bottle are you going to keep it in?" That's what happens to logic. If it's capable of solving anything, it will dissolve itself. A logical system which has universal application, in other words, that you can apply to any question and decide is it true or false, is self-destructive. And I can illustrate that by just having you consider this sentence. This statement has no proof. If you can prove that statement is true, then you have a contradiction. On the other hand, the only way to show that it's false is to prove that it's true. Another contradiction. So you have to leave it alone.